Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of NFL Dash. I'm Cody Schoeler here with Ryan Root as always, and we're going to get straight on into this and talk about the biggest story in the NFL right now that isn't Aaron Rodgers. I guess that's always persisting in the back of everybody's minds, but it's another superstar that is on the trade block or is at least being talked about being traded, and that's Julio Jones. We're just going to get into that and just talk it out. So I want to know where do you think that he plays this year, Ryan? I know I have provided a list of kind of the teams that are in the running for him, and then there's also the option of the Atlanta Falcons of them not even trading him. So what do you think about all this?
I think Atlanta's out of this. I think they're just they're going to take the amazing return that they'll get for him and just kind of go away with it. I mean, they just got Kyle Pitts. They still have Calvin Ridley. I believe Todd Gurley is still there playing, and
I think he's a free agent actually.
Oh, he's a free agent now.
Which I did not know, but apparently he does not have a job right now, which surprises me because he used to be good.
Well, they have Kyle Pitts that they just drafted, and that's, since it was just Jones and Ridley last year, and now it's going to be Ridley and Kyle Pitts, I say it's a step down to not have Julio Jones out there, but Kyle Pitts is going to be such a huge generational talent that I think the Falcons will manage, and they'll get some draft picks and maybe a player or so in return for Jones. But according to betonline.ag, we have the Seahawks as the plus 150 favorite for Julio Jones, which honestly I'm a bit surprised that they are the favorite team.
Yeah,
if I had to pick a favorite, I'd say it'd be the Patriots. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots put something together to get Jones. They've had a very aggressive offseason this entire time.
Yeah.
They just got Mac Jones. I mean, what better way to get Mac Jones into the swing of things than having a former All-Pro receiver to throw to? Cam Newton is arguably a bridge quarterback. I mean, he pretty much is a bridge quarterback for Mac Jones or maybe someone else down the future. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jones goes to New England and stirs up the AFC East to where there's now the Bills, the Dolphins, and then the Patriots are right back in there, and then we'll see what the Jets can do. But I think Bill Belichick is going to cook something up.
There's certainly the one team that needs him the most. I really do think it's a top four of the Seahawks, Titans, Patriots, and Ravens. I think that those are the teams that I just don't think there's some teams behind that, but the odds do fall off, and I just don't think that any of these other teams are going to be aggressive enough to make a move. Because I do think that, the Raiders, the Niners, maybe all these other teams, I do think that if you're trading for a guy like Julio Jones, you have to be ready to win now, and it's an aggressive move. It's not for somebody that's on the cusp of making the playoffs. It's a team that is on the cusp of getting to the conference championship or the Super Bowl.
Unless if you're on the cusp of making the playoffs, you're a playoff contender or you're a Super Bowl favorite. All three of those categories are above the Falcons at the moment. So wherever Julio's going to go is going to be an improvement, even if it is the Patriots. What you said about the Ravens, though, intrigues me considering the division that they're in with how competitive it is with the Steelers and the Browns there. A similar situation to the AFC East, but arguably more, star-studded.
It's probably the best division in the AFC with those three at the top.
Yeah, I would just be shocked to see what the Ravens would give up if they got Julio Jones, because they just gave up a first rounder to get that was the Chiefs that gave up a first rounder to the Ravens for some offensive line help. The Ravens just had two late first round picks,
which they drafted a receiver with one of them.
Right. So they got Lamar a little bit of help on in the receiver department and on the offensive line, but I'd be surprised if the Ravens did it over the Patriots, but I wouldn't be as shocked as if, say, the Raiders were to move up and do it. It's just all about kind of like what you said of who's in the best situation possible, but out of all the teams I see on here, I mean, 49ers, Dolphins, even the Cowboys, Chargers, I'd argue even the Giants are on the cusp of becoming playoff teams. The only team on here that I think is blasphemous. I mean, they're a plus 2,800 team, but in terms of what the odds are. But the Eagles have absolutely no shot of getting Julio Jones. You just got Devontae Smith, one step at a time. You're still trying to figure out who's going to throw him the ball this next year.
That's certainly reflected in that. But honestly, the team I think that the team that I think he plays for next year would probably be the Titans. Maybe I'm buying into the AJ Brown kind of social media recruitment of him, but they certainly do have a need for him, and just a need for him in the offense. Pairing him with AJ Brown would be good. And Ryan Tannehill, he's a solid quarterback. He's not great, but I think he's good enough to win with if you have great weapons around him and a solid defense. The defense are working out, but if you surround him with AJ Brown and Julio Jones and Derrick Henry, I think that's a good enough offense to succeed. So I think that's a team that should be aggressive in trying to go get a guy like that. And I'm not sure what the draft capital would be. Would it be a first? Well, it depends. Obviously, depends on the leverage. Because that's where I think I don't know how accurate it is for the Seahawks to be the favorites. I do believe they're in that top four, mainly because Russell Wilson has said that he wants Julio Jones, and when Russell Wilson says that, you have to at least entertain that. But I mean, we're both fans of the Seahawks, so I don't know how you feel, but I would be, if they traded for Julio Jones, I obviously would not be disappointed because he's an incredible player, but I don't want them to do that. I don't think they need to do that. And one of my biggest criticisms of just any team whether it's football or any other sport, is making big moves and doing these big things that when you are to address positions that aren't weaknesses while you are neglecting positions that are actual weaknesses. I thought Jamal Adams was a bit of that for them. I thought they needed to address the pass rush, which they didn't until Carlos Dunlap. But obviously they were able to use Jamal Adams in a bit of a unique way. But I think to go and trade, if it's a first round, I would be incredibly shocked and disappointed, I think, in the team. But to go and give a first round to plus whatever to Atlanta to get Julio Jones when there's still holes. I mean, the offensive line I think is better when there's still, you can still fix the offensive line, you can still fix the defensive line and the secondary for sure. I just would be, I don't think that's the greatest move for the Seahawks. I do think they need to entertain that, and if it costs a third round pick, then I'm fine with that. If that's what you can get it to, if he doesn't cost a bunch. That's why I always think that you should be involved in these, because you never know what you can get in a bargain. And Julio Jones clearly has the leverage in this position. The Atlanta Falcons do not. So I think, if you can get him for cheap, go for it. But if I see that the Seahawks traded a first round pick plus more for Julio Jones, I don't think that will really do. I don't think that moves the needle for the Seahawks the way that it does move the needle for the Titans or the Ravens or the Patriots. I think that is a way bigger upgrade for them than it is for the Seahawks. I think it makes them great, but I think it is a great move, but I don't think it makes them that much better of a team, because receivers probably the biggest strength of the team right now, other than quarterback. I mean, so I would not want to see the Seahawks make that trade, but I guess we'll see.
It's hard to see what the cost of a player is nowadays in the NFL, because, I mean, at least in the NBA, you have a good idea of what a player costs in terms of draft picks or player-to-player trades or whatever.
1 billion first-round picks.
Yeah, so you can at least understand a little bit in other leagues, but the NFL is hard, because the NFL, you could trade. How many picks did the Jets get for Jamal Adams plus Bradley McDougall?
Two first rounders,
and Bradley McDougall for a multi-time All-Pro safety and Jamal Adams. Sure, he's worth around that. I still think it might have been a little much, but Julio Jones is debatably worth a first-round pick. I mean, granted, this is a pretty different situation, but Antonio Brown was worth, what, a fifth-round pick for the Raiders, right? When they got Antonio Brown, and he didn't play a game for him. But
Yeah.
it was a very
he had
different
a
situation.
lot of issues surrounding that for sure. But yeah,
But
it
Antonio Brown was
changes.
easily the favorite
Mm-hmm.
around that time to be the best receiver in the league before DeAndre Hopkins started going in that conversation. What players are worth in trade conversations is extremely hard to figure out. I mean, the Chicago Bears put together a ton of draft capital together to try to make a stab at Russell Wilson, and it had no deal.
Draft capital plus Khalil Mack.
Yeah, so if that doesn't show the value of Russell Wilson, well, one could argue the value of Aaron Rodgers is even higher. So how many picks, players, cash, a coupon book, what do you want to give up to get Aaron Rodgers? I mean, I can't even imagine how much he'd be worth. And then on top of that, it'd be Patrick Mahomes, So Julio Jones is in that conversation, at least in the top 10 receivers of the league. I mean, you can interchange him any way you want, but what he's worth is a little bit hard to figure out. But like you were saying with the receiver conversation with the Seahawks, that's, like you said, arguably the strongest position for them outside of quarterback or linebacker. It shocks me that Russell Wilson got on the phone and said, Julio, we really want you to come and play with us.
Yeah.
How many more people do you need to throw to? Like, there have been so many seasons where you've thrown to no-name receivers and had Pro Bowl seasons every year, gone to the playoffs. I mean, he's gone to the playoffs every single year except for one. And the one year he didn't was arguably his best season.
And they missed it by a game.
Right. I mean, that was the Blair Walsh season. We don't have to bring that up. But, he's thrown to so many different guys across the board, and none of them have been DeAndre Hopkins or Antonio Brown or Gronkowski, or he hasn't had superstar receivers to throw to this whole time.
Till now, DK Metcalf.
Right,
now.
with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, there you go. Those are your two guys.
Yeah.
I mean, Minnesota's got Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. They're doing just fine. They got Dalvin Cook in the backfield. They got more weapons to deal with, and I haven't even brought up Kyle Rudolph, okay? That doesn't make Kirk Cousins a better quarterback. There's a whole other deal going on in Minnesota. But Russell Wilson doesn't need weapons. I argued that he needed a new offensive coordinator, a new playbook to work off of, and a little bit of offensive line help. He got both of those things.
Yeah, exactly.
So Julio Jones is not going to make the Seahawks that much better of a team. Will it improve them? Just statistically and just ideally, yes. I mean, there's no argument there. But Julio
Jones gives them more talent. But
I'll ask you this because I thought about this with the Julio Jones conversation.
Yeah.
So Julio Jones, if you put him on the worst team in the NFL today, they would not be playoff contenders.
No.
Because he is just a receiver. So if you could take that same analogy and put it to the nth degree, if you take Patrick Mahomes and put him on the worst team in the league, they would not make the playoffs either. Because one player cannot change a team that much.
Especially in football when the positional value of wide receiver just isn't.
Right.
Isn't
so Julio Jones is going to make a team better. It's going to make them maybe take that next step. But if you are already not playoff bound, you're not going to be in the playoff conversation. If you're in that playoff cusp, like a lot of these top, the top best odds for landing Julio Jones, if you're on the cusp of making those playoffs, then yeah, this will be an improvement. But if you're like the Seahawks, where you're one of the best teams in the conference, this is you're really just trying to cash out at this point, and it's not going to be beneficial in the long run.
I mean, it's positional upgrade when you are the Titans and you're adding Julio Jones, and then I don't even know who their second receiver is now, but you're adding Julio Jones, and now you don't have to play this guy, whoever it is. But when you're the Seahawks,
to run it to Derrick Henry 30 times a game.
But when you're the Seahawks and you're adding Julio Jones, it's like, okay, so you're taking it away from DK Metcalf and from Tyler Lockett. Like you're fixing a hole that isn't there. You're plugging a leak that when there isn't one. And so that's why I think, it's just a luxury for a team that I don't think is in the position to be going for luxury because they have needs. And then, you factor in the fact, for any of these teams, you have the cap factor of it, and he's got 3 more years with, 15 this year and 11 for 2 years. And I think, that's when, a team like the Patriots, which has a bunch of cap room, or the team like the Titans, which isn't paying their quarterback $35 million and, can spare the cap room. So I think that's another big thing is he's not an expiring, which I think adds to the, the trade value of him. This isn't 1 year of Julio Jones. There's an out after year 2, but this is seemingly 3 years of Julio Jones. I don't know what he's going to be playing at, but, so I think that is probably going to, he'll be worth more than just a third rounder because of this. My guess would be he doesn't go for more than a second rounder, just because I don't know if a team will be willing to hand over a first rounder. I think Atlanta
how old is the guy? Isn't he like 32, 33?
Yeah, he'll be 32 this year. And I think, if I'm Atlanta, I can't drive a hard bargain because I don't think, Julio Jones has said it on live television. He's gone. He wants out. He's out. So I think, if Atlanta can get a second round pick and, go, all right, we're going for the youth movement and we're going to just go Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts, then I think that will, be the right move for them. But I still think Titans be where he's at. I know you are going with the Patriots, but I think we both agree that Atlanta is probably out. He might be on Atlanta's roster at the start of the season if they really just don't want to trade him, but I don't think that he plays. I think that he's ready to be out. But who knows? There's a lot of crazy stuff. But I want to talk about some other guys who might be traded that not just one, we don't have another big superstar other than Aaron Rodgers, which we have gone over before. But who else do you think could be on the move this offseason? We've seen the quarterbacks already. We've seen Matthew Stafford and Carson Wentz and Sam Darnold and Jared Goff and, a lot of quarterbacks be traded. But, we still have, it's, the 1st of June. Training camp probably won't start for 2.5 months, maybe a month and a half. So we're certainly going to see some guys move between now and then. But what are you thinking on this?
I think probably the most obvious guy that's going to get traded at some point or another is Patrick Mahomes. No, I'm joking. But at least one name that comes up to mind that's at least falling in line of Aaron Rodgers and Julio Jones is Stephan Gilmore. Mm-hmm. For a lot of teams that need a good corner, we were just talking about the Seahawks. Even the Falcons need some secondary help as well. If you want to be a Super Bowl contending team, you got to have a good secondary. And I can picture Stephan Gilmore going to numerous places, but I don't think he's going to be put on a contender, so to speak, because if he's going to a contender, chances are they already had a lockdown corner, and who knows how that's all going to mix together. But I could totally picture Stephan Gilmore going to kind of a beat 'em up team, like maybe the Bengals, maybe the don't want to say the Texans. What's another team in the AFC South that I'm trying to think of right now? Not the Titans.
The Jaguars.
No, because they just got Shaquille Griffin. Maybe I'm thinking of some other team. I could picture Broncos. I could picture. I could picture the Lions. That'd be real tough. But Matt Patricia's not there anymore, so they don't really have a connection there anymore. But Stephan Gilmore's going to get traded, I think, to a little bit of a beat 'em up team that is probably going to be the first to jump on a superstar corner. Like, oh, I got to have former All-Pro corner Stephan Gilmore. I'll give you, here's a third round, second round pick.
Yeah.
That to me is probably the next guy who will be kind of in the circulation of the conversation. But could be wrong because the NFL seems to really want to shock us this offseason with J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney and
a bunch of guys moving around. But Stephan Gilmore is a guy who his name has been in rumors for quite a bit. I think maybe even dating back to the trade deadline last year. I can't remember, but Bill Belichick likes to get rid of players before they completely lose all their value. We know that. And Stephan Gilmore was really a tale of two seasons because 2 years ago he won Defensive Player of the Year and had one of the best cornerback seasons. And it's a dominant corner season. And then last year he was not the same guy. I mean, we saw DK Metcalf kind of bully him in week 2 of the season. So, it's interesting to see just what are you going to get. And I think that hurts the trade value of a guy like that because you're kind of taking a risk. And, the Patriot defensive system is incredible. And what's he going to do outside of that? A lot of guys don't do much when they leave New England. I do think he's better than, some of the guys that have done that. But, and the Patriots are in a weird spot for, they're spending a lot and they're doing all this stuff, but they're kind of also trying to rebuild on the fly, and kind of get into the next kind of, step for them. So they might think that Stephan Gilmore and his salary is not a part of that plan. So, I could see him, leaving for sure. And I disagree a bit on the landing spot just because I don't think that it's going to be a great team that trading for him. I agree with that just because most of them don't have that hole. And then also that's, you don't see them trading for big salaries a lot. But I think that whoever does trade for him will at least see themselves as a wild card type guy just because he could be that good. And, I don't know how willing a bad team will be to give up draft capital for an older player. But, I think he's more of like a, Raiders, Broncos type area. I do agree with that.
Which that would be great for those teams.
I mean, the Cowboys could be a really good spot for him because they need corner help. They didn't really address it as much as they could have in the draft with their guys getting taken right ahead of them, those two corners. So that's a team that obviously always believes that they are a playoff team, even when they're not, and that has a need at corner, willing to spend. So I think that could be a good destination, or maybe another NFC East team that, technically they're all playoff contenders because of how bad that division can be. But that's a guy who, it certainly would not surprise me if he gets traded. Absolutely. Another guy who I think I would be incredibly shocked if he doesn't get traded is Zach Ertz. He just the way that he kind of seemed to realize after that last home game last year that it was his last game. I think they're kind of on mutual standings with that. The Eagles obviously have Dallas Goedert coming up as an incredible young tight end. And I think Zach Ertz is at a stage in his career where he doesn't want to play on crappy teams. So, the tight end position is really weak across the league. There's a handful of great players, and then it gets rough after that. So he certainly could be a valuable asset to a team that needs a tight end. He obviously struggled a lot last year and was not very good and has lost his step. But he has the name value of, being Zach Ertz, a guy who set the record for most catches by a tight end a few years ago. That name value is going to be worth something. So I do see a team in need of help at the tight end spot take a flyer on him. And it's not going to be expensive. It's going to be a day 3 pick, maybe another day 3 pick, but it's not going to be a lot. So I think that he's a perfect, take a flyer on him type of guy and hope that, he gets a little rejuvenated by that and he can be the, 75% of the player that he was just a few years ago.
A team that interests me to take a stab at getting Zach Ertz would honestly be the Bills, because I believe their tight end situation, I want to say it was
Dawson Knox.
Yeah.
Dawson Knox. And I think they signed Jacob Hollister from the Seahawks. And they've got a handful of other guys, but Knox is their number one.
I'm going to miss Hollister. That was fun. But Zach Ertz, I think, would be he's going to be a valuable tight end for any team that has not necessarily a rebuilding process, but like you said, where the tight end position is really thin. Other than Mark Andrews, George Kittle, I'm even going to put Kyle
Travis
Pitts
Kelce
in there, and
Travis Kelce.
And Travis Kelce. Outside those 5, not really much that comes to. I guess Gronk could get thrown in there.
There's some young guys Hawkinson, Noah Fant that aren't there yet, but they're
Right.
too young to move on from. But I mean, there are not. I mean, Zach Ertz was a superstar tight end a few years ago when there was only like four. So there's really I mean, not a lot. There's a lot of teams with guys who you wouldn't even recognize their name starting and catching passes at tight end.
Even Greg Olsen was in that conversation for best tight end in the league a couple of years ago as well. But I can totally picture Zach Ertz going to. I really think the Bills should try to take at least a shot to do that, because if there's anything that's going to get the Bills back in that Super Bowl picture, it's going to be kind of doubling down on the offense that lifted them up so high this last year. They kind of need to focus a little bit more on a consistent rushing attack. But Zach Ertz can go to any team that obviously needs the tight end spot, but it's going to be one that kind of knows what they're getting when they get Zach Ertz. It's like I'm sure the Seahawks, when they got Greg Olsen, weren't thinking, here we go, we got one of the best tight ends in recent memory, Greg Olsen. He's going to catch 12 touchdown passes and 1,000 yards, and you have
to be ready for him. You have to be ready for him to suck.
Right. You got to be. It's kind of. This isn't the same thing with the Stephan Gilmore situation, but it's similar in a sense of they used to be great. You got to accept that they're either going to be. Zach Ertz has a way lower ceiling than Stephan Gilmore does, I'll say, considering Gilmore has been immensely successful more recently than Zach Ertz has. But whoever gets Zach Ertz, I'm sure they'll realize they're going to get the most out of him for whatever that he can do to contribute to that offense. But I hope he finds a good spot, because in terms of, I mean, the Eagles are in a full rebuild kind of self-destruction mode right now to figure out what's going on. So that's Devontae Smith's problem now. We'll see if we can. We'll see
I got my team for Zach Ertz. Okay. I hadn't put much thought into where I think he would end up. Obviously, I had the template of, there's a bunch of teams that need tight ends, but it came up to me. I checked the roster, but I think the New Orleans Saints could be a really interesting spot for him, because it's kind of like I said,
Jared Cook. So
yeah, exactly. And they didn't replace him. They have Adam Troutman, who they drafted somewhere second or third round last year. He's a small school tight end. So he was a rookie last year, I think, or year before. Could be a guy at some point, but not yet. And so I think the Saints are kind of in that perfect place where we discussed, where they do need a tight end, and they're a good team that because kind of like we said, does it help if the Texans are the Texans trading for Zach Ertz? Probably not, because it doesn't do anything for them, But so they're a good team that could use him, and if he sucks, they're fine, because they have other options, and they're a solid team. So I think a team like that's in the position to succeed with or without him, but it would help if they had him, especially with whoever takes over there at quarterback. So I think a team like the Saints could be a decent landing spot for him, because they clearly have a need, as I'm sure there are other teams in that same position. But do you have like a surprising trade candidate guy? Obviously Ertz and Gilmore are much more widely reported and recognized as being traded, but is there somebody that maybe isn't, like, just throw at the wall? It doesn't have to be one guy. Maybe there's a few you're thinking of. I know I'm kind of springing this on you, but maybe guys who it could be possible, because I think we've seen that happen with, Julio Jones would have been a guy like that not too long ago. So it certainly happens.
One player that comes to mind in terms of like a surprise that is a surprise at first, but isn't necessarily a surprise when you really break it down, if you ask me, I'd probably go with Juju SmithSchuster, because I've said it before. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are preparing for a fake season. Like, I think they're still kind of holding on to the golden days with Big Ben, and I'm not even going to throw in Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown into their golden days eras, but like
The
that
killer
feels so.
bees.
Yeah, it feels so long ago.
It does.
That
Well, because they're all washed up.
Yeah, I mean, they
Maybe not
re-signed
Antonio Brown.
Big Ben, and it kept him around. I don't believe they drafted a quarterback in the draft. I could be wrong, but
not a
even if they
not
did, they
a
didn't
big
pick.
name.
They didn't pick any of the guys that were being talked about every day.
They didn't get they didn't get Kyle Trask or any of those second tier
I found
guys.
out the other day. I completely nailed my Kyle Trask prediction.
You did.
Going to Tampa Bay. I'm just going to put that out there, but. Pittsburgh is prepared for a faux season. They had a fun pick with Najee Harris, but Juju Smith-Schuster could have a really bright spot in his career if he gets pushed to maybe a Tennessee if they don't land Julio. Maybe I wouldn't picture the Seahawks need to stop getting receivers.
Yeah.
Maybe a Patriots if he doesn't land there or wherever. I think Juju Smith-Schuster can still be used like efficiently and appropriately, but the Steelers, I mean, is Chase Claypool gonna be the next number one dude? Is he gonna have to take the step back so Juju can be the new guy?
Deontay Johnson's the next number one.
Oh no, Deontay Johnson. Let's see, we got 3 guys here that
and James Washington. Don't forget James Washington.
I mean, there's just so many. I don't want to say there's so many mouths to feed, but there's so much potential across 3 dudes. I mean, Chase Claypool. People were looking at Chase Claypool like
he's a beast.
Oh my God, this guy is the greatest receiver ever. That 1 week that he had like 150, 160 yards receiving and like 3 touchdowns or something like that, like some ridiculous game. And he's had some regression of his own. So I would take Juju and move him, have Claypool still have that room to grow, because I mean, Juju was in the same spot as Claypool when he was a rookie, where I mean he was a first round pick as well, but he was in the same kind of area that Claypool was in, where it was like, oh my God, this guy is the greatest thing ever. But now he's kind of hit that ceiling. If you move him to a team that, I mean, move him out of your division, because Lord knows you don't want to stack up that division anymore.
Yeah.
Move him out of the conference so you don't got to deal with him. Move him to a Philadelphia if he wants to go there. But I mean, that's kind of my hot pick for a trade. Maybe not this offseason, but
yeah,
I'd maybe even throw Christian McCaffrey in there, which may sound blasphemous, but maybe Christian McCaffrey realizes the situation that the Panthers are in, where it's like they could be a wild card team or they could be bottom feeders for the next 5 years. And McCaffrey is wildly discussed as the best running back in the league. So where does he maybe want to go instead to push his career to the next level? But that's at least 2 that I can think of right now.
Yeah.
McCaffrey's very, very hot take.
I think that's going crazy, because I think that Carolina's building something there. They're a young team. I think Matt Rule's a good coach, so I think McCaffrey will stick around. I believe they gave him a big contract extension, so I think he'll be all right there, but you never know. And then Juju is a really interesting situation, because he was a free agent in this offseason and ended up re-signing with the Steelers, I believe, on just a 1-year deal, because the market for him probably wasn't what he expected. He's really been – it was maybe his second year was his best year, but it's kind of been downhill from there. And ever since Antonio Brown left, he hasn't really been the same guy and had the same numbers. So I think there's a lot of kind of just questions about who Juju Smith-Schuster is. But he and whoever trades for him, would he be on expiring, they could re-sign him. But if he plays well, then he certainly is a guy that the Steelers would not mind moving, because they didn't make a big deal to get him back. But I was thinking about this, because honestly, I sprung this on you, and I really sprung it on myself, because I didn't think about this at all until I decided to ask you this. And I wanted to think out of the box. And then, I started thinking about the bad teams that I think would be in that position, because what we're seeing is it's J.J. Watt got released, but J.J. Watt from the Texans, who suck. Julio Jones from the Falcons, who struggled. Even before that, DeAndre Hopkins from the Texans, who sucked. So I think you're starting to see
Campbell from the Jaguars as well could be in
it's these teams that are bad, and so maybe this team won't be that bad, but I'm honestly kind of looking at Ezekiel Elliott as
I was
the
thinking
next
that
guy.
same thing.
Mm-hmm,
it's not that hot of a take. I was literally thinking about that.
Yeah, which I landed on him in my head, and I was like, oh, that kind of works, but because I could see both sides getting fed up, I could see Zeke going, all right, I'm out of here. Like I want to leave. I don't think this is a place for me, and I can also see the Cowboys being like, all right, Zeke, like you're not the guy. We're ready to move on. We're paying you too much. Because he's kind of been the same thing. He did not look like the same guy last year.
Mm-hmm.
And he really hasn't since he was insane his first couple of years, but we've seen that from running backs. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him get moved. I don't necessarily know what the market is for him. I think running back is one of we haven't really seen. I mean, Le'Veon Bell didn't get traded when he asked for it. And so it's an interesting position. So I don't
got to the Jets.
I guess he did. That's where he ended up. He went and signed with the Jets because nobody wants to trade for a running back they think is washed up. But I think Ezekiel Elliott is a little bit younger, and teams might still believe in him. But I mean that I don't know. Like you said, I don't know if this is an off-season move because I think it kind of has to build up to that. But I don't know. Like I don't know how long Ezekiel Elliott is going to be in Dallas, and like I said, because I could see either side getting fed up, and so I think that creates the perfect recipe. Not if you're a Cowboys fan, but the perfect recipe for one of these superstar trades, especially if the Cowboys don't do as good this year as they think that they should, which they might think that they're better than they actually are. But I could see him being the next disgruntled superstar.
Honestly, if this Zeke Elliott trade rumors or offseason rumors becomes a thing down the line, send him to Miami. I feel like that would be a home run for Miami. That would instantly make Miami like a borderline top 5 team in the AFC at that point. I mean, Myles Gaskin is great, but if you have 9 times out of 10, you're taking Zeke Elliott over Myles Gaskin. And if you give
I want to talk to whoever that 10th guy is because I don't know what he's thinking. Going with Myles Gaskin over.
That's probably a UW fan there. But
yeah.
I mean, Zeke Elliott would absolutely transcend that offense if he would ever to go there. They didn't get or they got Waddle right in the draft, and they lost Gesicki. So Tua doesn't have much to work with at the moment right now. What's their receiver that they have as well?
Devontae Parker. And they signed Will Fuller.
Oh, it's Devontae Parker that they got. Wait, where did Waddle go then?
No, they drafted Waddle, they've had Parker, and they signed Fuller.
Oh, I keep messing up Devontae Parker with Devontae Smith. That's my problem. Okay. Devontae Parker and Jalen Waddle. So they got that. They lost the tight end spot a little bit, and running back is kind of on the up and coming. But if they got Zeke Elliott to get thrown in there with Miami's defense, there you go. I mean, you're right there on your way.
And I just looked up Zeke's stats, and I said, this 2020 not his best year, probably his worst year, but he still rushed for 979 yards, averaging 4 yards a carry. Like if that's a bad season, like
if you run someone enough times, you're going to get that amount of yards.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to see what the attempts are on that.
Yeah, I mean it was 244 attempts, but so like I said, 4 yards a carry or an attempt, which is not great, but it's not terrible. Like I don't think he's fallen off. So I'm not in the camp of Ezekiel Elliott is like washed. Get him out of there. He sucks. Right. Like if I'm the Cowboys, I'm still going to hold on to him. I think that he's incredibly valuable. The offensive line has been declining at the same rate that maybe he has been declining. So I think there's some more issues going on there. But I am probably no longer in the camp of, Zeke Elliott is one of the top 5 running backs in the league. I need to draft him 3rd overall in my fantasy league. I'm out of that camp, but I do think he is still a very talented individual. So I think he would be, he's a guy that if I think, I talked about how running back trade value is, pretty crappy at times. But I think if he's a guy who starts to be thrown out there, I think there will be more teams in on him than there have been for the Le'Veon Bells and, the Leonard Fournettes and the other kind of, running backs, the Melvin Gordon that wanted out. I do think Zeke is a bit better than those guys. So I do think he will actually get traded. Miami is a really good fit for him. And then, we'll see anywhere else that has a young running back who kind of declines, or the Jets maybe get this guy again. They tried Le'Veon, didn't work. But yeah, that could be really interesting.
They're gonna have the decision of Dak or Zeke, and I would think
I think they're paying them both right now, which exactly that's another thing is. Let me look.
Just because they're paying them doesn't mean that something can't unravel in the offseason.
No, exactly.
Where one wants out.
No, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean they're paying Zeke
over $90 million contract or something.
Yeah, 6 years, $90 million. So he's under contract for it. It kicks in this year. So it looks like 6 years with over, it's 9-6 this year, 12, 10, all that. So he's got a long contract, and so the Cowboys might realize that we don't know if we want Zeke for 6 more years. Yeah, I believe there's an out in there, but maybe the Dolphins or the Lions or the Washington or somebody goes, we'll take a flyer on him. Who knows? I do think he is still very talented.
Both those teams did get Adrian Peterson for a little bit, so
yeah, maybe that's the career trajectory, the Adrian Peterson career rejuvenation path. But that's going to do it for today. A bit on the shorter side this time around, but we will have another show up next week around the same time, middle of the week for you, NFL Dash. Check out some of our previous episodes if you have not, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dash Sports, and then to follow us on socials at Dash Sports TV, where you can check out more of our episodes along with our Pac-12 coverage and our other shows. So that'll do it. See you next week.